Hey folks, Matt Easton here, Scholar Gladiatoria. So here I have another review for you, and it is the Neyman, I'm not sure exactly how it's pronounced, but I will call it Neyman, the Neyman fencing jacket. Now, these have been getting a certain amount of attention on places like Facebook, and quite a lot of people are using these now. So this isn't a new piece of equipment, it's a piece of equipment that's been around for a while. It is a HEMA fencing jacket. And obviously the sort of benchmark, I suppose, has been set by the company Spez, based in Poland. Neyman fencing jackets are also from Poland. And Spez, you know, particularly the Axel Petersen jacket, which I've used myself now for, well, years, I'm not even sure how many years, at least 3 years I would think. And that jacket has become pretty much the standard in HEMA, both in, as far as I can see, in America and also in Europe and elsewhere. And certainly if you go around most big HEMA events, most people fencing with steel will be wearing the Spez Axel Petersen jacket. So I will, by necessity, compare this to that in certain ways. Now, I should say straight up that my ability to review and test this jacket is limited because it doesn't fit me. Now that it was due to, shall we say, communication error, but essentially I was supposed to get a jacket made by Neyman made to fit me. I sent them my stats. They then went quiet for a while. I then contacted them and said, hey, how's it going? And they said, could you basically put it through our website. So I went and did it through the website, and somehow, somewhere along the line, I know that they've done website changes and had various other administrative challenges. Somewhere along the line I ended up with a small jacket rather than a jacket in my size. So unfortunately this is both too small for me but too big for my wife, so I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do with this jacket. I might find someone that it fits, but anyway, I also had toyed with the idea of getting a red jacket, and I thought that I had ordered a black jacket, but there we go. So rather than a black jacket that fitted me, I ended up with a red jacket that didn't fit me. But I entirely accept this was at least partially my fault. I think it was also partially Neyman's fault. In fairness, I'm not going to take all of the blame, but there we go. I've ended up with a HEMA fencing jacket that I can't wear. However, I can still look at the thing and tell you about my impressions. Now, first impression is, it's not massively different from the Spez jacket, okay? What does it bring to the party that the Spez doesn't? Well, from the outset, one of the things you notice is it's got this belt section that goes around the middle. Now, one of the issues with the Spez jacket is that certainly for me and for slimmer people, we often find it's too big around the middle, and that's, so for example in Spez size, I've got a 42-inch chest or thereabouts, so I'm large on Spez's size for the chest, but I'm medium on Spez's size around the tummy. Clearly I need to eat more cake. But the result is that for me to get a jacket off the shelf, as it were, that fits me without getting a bespoke one, I end up with more room around my tummy than I really need. Now that's not a huge problem, doesn't really matter, as long as it fits around the shoulders, and I've never really had a huge problem with it being too roomy around my tummy, but I would prefer one that fitted because it looks better, it looks more flattering. But anyway, so this jacket does have the advantage that it's sort of waisted, and it has this belt which is, it's got Velcro, there we go, I'll just undo it, hold on, there we go, and then it goes around the middle. I'm not going to do that now because it's too fiddly. So you can put this belt around. Now, belts around the middle, pluses and minuses. Number one, it does mean that you can have a jacket which is kind of off the shelf and you can make it fit you around the waist better, looks a bit more flattering, especially for those of you who like the sort of corseted look. The downside is it's another thing for swords to get stuck in, and any of you who spar regularly with things like red dragon gloves or indeed certain types of fencing mask cover will know that anywhere that a sword point can get stuck in, it will, okay? So the more we can reduce the number of places that a sword point can get stuck, the better. So that's a minor plus, a minor minus, as it were. The jacket as a whole, I should say, appears to be really well made. They offer different types, so you can get pretty much any colour, I think, and pretty much any fabric. This is a sort of shiny fabric, but you can get it in a more matte, more like typical cotton fabric. I can't really comment on the breathability of these fabrics and the padding and stuff, because obviously I can't wear this jacket because it's too small for me. But it certainly feels nice, and all of the joints appear really well done together, and the stitching appears really well done. It looks tidy, it's got tidy edges, the Velcro appears well stitched in. The zip. Now, so one of the common problems with the early Spez jackets was that the zips kept breaking. My God, we must have had about 10 of those zips break in my club. Luckily mine never did, even though it was a fairly early jacket. Spez have now fixed that problem with better zips, I believe. How is this zip? It appears to be okay. The zip itself is plastic, the zipper is metal. I've got to say it's not the most substantial zip. In a perfect world, I would have a metal zip, and I would have a bigger thing to hold on to. That, especially if you've got gloves on, is a very small zipper to try and grab onto. So I would prefer to see a more substantial zip, but I do like the fact that they've got Velcro there, so once you have zipped it up, the Velcro covers it. I should say straight up, aesthetically speaking, I do not like, and in fact I would go as far as to say I really hate the white strips that they put down the zip line and around the cuffs. Anybody who uses jackets regularly will know the things that get dirtiest on one of these jackets, and they do get dirty and stinky, are collars, zip bits and cuffs. So they've put white on two of the bits that are going to get the most filthy. I think that's a really, really bad idea. Similarly, the inside lining is white. Well, it's nice when it's new. I'm not so sure it's the best for kind of once it's got a bit grubby, but I guess at least you can tell when it is clean if you give it a good wash. I also can't tell you how well this washes because I haven't tried to wash it, because I haven't used it, so there wasn't any point in washing it. The padding itself, to me, feels lighter than the Spez AP Axel Petersen jacket. That is both a good and a bad thing. Now, I'm actually looking at lighter jackets at the moment because I don't feel that I need the level of padding that I've got on the Axel Petersen jacket. I don't need that level of padding for Military Sabre anymore. I feel that generally speaking, I'm managing to not get hit in the body very hard, very often, so I don't need that level of padding on my body anymore, but I still like it on my arms, and I have to say, my impression is that the padding on the Neyman jacket is thinner than the Spez jacket, and I'm not a fan of that. To me, the padding on these arms feels a bit too light, but it might be that you intend to put arm guards and elbow guards and other bits and pieces on the top of these arms. When you come to decide which jacket to have, one of the things you have to decide right at the beginning is what additional things you're going to wear with that jacket. Clearly, if you're going to wear a plastron underneath, that dictates your choices. If you're going to wear a forearm guard and an elbow guard, that dictates your choices. Currently, I find that most of the time, unless I'm fighting a particularly heavy-hitting opponent, my Spez Axel Petersen jacket has enough protection on the arms for Military Sabre. And the only thing I wear on my arms additionally is an elbow cup, which is no real hassle and you don't even remember it's there. So just to protect the point of the elbow. I don't wear anything additionally on the forearms. If I was using this jacket, I would, I think, definitely put a forearm guard on. But I don't like having to put a forearm guard on. So personally, I would prefer, particularly the forearms, the upper arms are not so important, although some people might disagree with that, but I would personally prefer more padding or stiffer padding in the forearms than there currently is on this jacket. In terms of the collar, it's a very simple collar. It's good that it velcros closed over once you've zipped it. There is no form of blade catcher or anything else or anywhere to slide in a hard protective thing. I would say that the Spez collar is better than this collar in my opinion. But there's nothing that, you know, tragically bad with this collar. It's just a very simple collar, but you will want to wear something additional with it, of course a gorget or such like. In terms of one of the other things actually, so one of the other things is the armpit. So lots of people think about getting hit where you usually get hit. But because I do sabre and a little bit of rapier, and I've seen blades break and go through jackets, including Newton rated sport fencing jackets, one of the places I always check is the armpit. Now, it's always surprised me that the Axel Petersen jacket from Spez is very thin, really, at the armpit, and a lot of people go, oh, it's got bags of protection up here, it's got tons of protection, it's got a double layer on the chest, blah blah blah. That doesn't really help if a blade breaks and goes straight up through your armpit, okay? And that's why at fight camp, for example, we make people wear plastrons if they want to fight, because quite simply the plastron protects your armpit, which has got no real muscle in there. You've just got ribs and then it's your lungs, or ribs and then it's your lungs and your heart, okay? So there's not very much in your armpits to protect you, and the fact that these are pretty thin as well. I actually, being honest, I think that the Neyman jacket feels very slightly thicker than the Spez jacket does in the armpit, but they're both not very well protected, to be completely honest. So you would want to, I would advise in steel tournaments to wear a plastron under here, because that level of fabric under there, that feels like about, well, it's an inner layer, an outer layer, and something in the middle, but there's not very much there at all. I would imagine a broken blade could go through there without, you know, with relative ease. If you're unlucky and you get hit there, there is more padding on the outside edge of the arm than there is on the armpit, definitely. In terms of the way the arms are joined and the mobility, we've essentially got a big gusset in there, and it's seems fine. Obviously I can't wear the jacket. This is one aspect of this jacket I can't really review very well, and I apologise for that, but I do my best. I should also mention that these are 350 Newton rating, okay? 350 Newtons by itself is not very much, so you would want to be wearing a plastron underneath against steel weapons in case they break, okay? You never know when a breakage is going to be a nice clean straight line, or it might be a diagonal line. I have seen people on the internet saying, oh, well, you know, a broken fede is not as dangerous as a broken epee because it's a broader blade and therefore less likely to penetrate jacket. I'm afraid to say, folks, I've seen broken rapiers, broken sabres, broken fedes, broken arming swords. I've probably seen just about broken every type of sword by now. And sometimes they break straight across, so you end up with a nice broad blade. Sometimes they break in a jagged line, which actually is probably one of the safest. It might tear your jacket, but it's unlikely to penetrate because it doesn't have one point and the fabric will get snagged in it. But unfortunately, very occasionally, you do see a blade break and it breaks into like a chisel point like that. And sometimes the blade breaks so that it's actually a new point, so it'll break like this. So you just never know how a blade's going to break. Sorry, excuse that was a knife dropping on the floor, ignore that. You never know how a blade's going to break, so frankly you want as much Newton rating as you can get to protect your vital bits. Inside, it's, as I mentioned before, it's nice and white and shiny and yeah, cosy. It's going to be a fairly warm jacket, but most of these jackets are. I would say, to finish off, to sum up, because I've been talking for long enough already, this is a fairly similar package to the Spez Axel Petersen jacket. However, I think it offers slightly less protection. Neyman are able to add bits. They're far more, I think, they're far more open. They seem, to me, far more open to customising than Spez generally are. Spez, I think, produce in much bigger numbers, so Neyman, I think, are looking a little bit more at the customisation market. So if you want one with less padding on the body and more padding on the arms, I'm sure they can do that. Just talk to them. Equally, they make a lot of jackets which are bespoke fitted for people, so that's really cool. Their prices seem decent, their service is friendly and nice. They've got a new website. I know they had some problems with their website, but hopefully that's all resolved now. And at the end of the day, I would say this is a decent mid-range jacket. It is not the answer to my dreams, personally, and there are some aesthetic choices, such as the belt and the white down the edges, that I personally don't like, and I'm not a big fan of the collar on this, and I'm not, at least in the standard model, a big fan of where the padding has been placed and how it's been distributed. But there we go, folks. I hope that's useful. I just reiterate to finish off, this is the standard jacket, and you can get them to customize stuff in all different kinds of ways. And I know, for example, a couple recently who got Neyman to make them head to foot gear for their wedding, in actual fact, HEMA gear for a HEMA wedding. And yeah, it was very cool. So they're very open to to inquiries about doing things specifically as you like. And of course they can come in any fabric or any colour pretty much. And you will hopefully get that 350 Newton rating at least with everything they make. Cheers, folks! Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, follow us on Facebook. You can buy t-shirts through Spreadshirt, support us on Patreon, or follow us on Pinterest. Thank you.